Hey everyone, in today's episode, I'll discuss Sydney's inner west property market. It's an area that I actually grew up in this area, so I know it back to front. It's an area that's changed a lot over the time that I've lived here as well. And it's also one of Australia's, I'd say, most famous property markets. It's one of the areas that's best known in Australia as well for being an area that's quite walkable, quite commutable, and also I'd say one of the most famous in terms of the pub sort of atmosphere as well. So in today's episode, I'll get into a few things. First of all, where the inner west is in Sydney. Second of all, inner west living in Sydney, what it's about, what you can expect. Thirdly, the top 3 suburbs to live in, and then finally the top 3 suburbs to invest in. This is a funny thing to do, but like where the inner west in Sydney is up for debate for a lot of people. And it's funny to say that because there's people that say, oh, that's not truly the inner west. No, this is, that's not. But really the geographical inner west, it's technically the Cooks River boundary going up towards basically Homebush, and then straight up towards Rhodes and anywhere from there. So it's the Cooks River geographically that actually shows what the inner west is and where it is. So that's where it is. But you get people saying, for example, particularly the ones who live in the affluent parts of the inner west, somewhere like Helston Park isn't the true inner west, somewhere like Strathfield's not the inner west. You get people saying that. You get people saying Tempe's not the inner west, Sydenham's not the inner west. But I mean, geographically it is, because it's bounded by the Cooks River. So let's just not make any argument here. This is where the inner west is, as you can see in the image, and that follows basically that bottom line that goes up to sort of the left-hand side or western side, follows pretty much the Cooks River and some of the main roads that run up there, kind of through there. So that's where the inner west is. Look, what you can expect in the inner west. Now, it's interesting because the inner west has both older and newer money. Look, you could argue, if you took it back 100 years, it was all new money, but some of the areas in the inner west have been fairly affluent since pretty much the 80s and onwards. So I'm not going to say it's only new money. It is old money as well. Look, you got great both private and public schools here. So good examples of that is you got your obviously PLC, MLC for girls, Newington, you got Trinity as well there. Those are all good examples of good private schools. You've also got, in terms of public, you got Sydney Secondary College, it's there, Fort Street's there as well, all well known, Newtown Performing Arts, all well known too. It's definitely known for some of Sydney's best transport. That will only get better as well in the future, with both the Inner West line and the Bankstown line getting the metro, which both happen to go straight through the Inner West of Sydney. So you are going to have some of the best transport in the whole country through here, and that's only about a year away, so you're definitely getting that. Some of the best and most culturally diverse restaurant scene. So you probably get every culture's cuisine in the inner west of Sydney, particularly around anywhere like Marrickville, Enore, Stanmore, Newtown, all of those sorts of suburbs, Dulwich Hill, really good, restaurants and culturally diverse cuisine. Some of the best walkable neighbourhoods as well are here. So Newtown is a good example. One of them, it's a walker's paradise, that suburb. There's everything there. One thing that you need to consider as well is the inner west at the moment already has fairly high density, but it's going to increase, especially under the transport orientated plan. And that will 100% continue. Some parts are low density, and I will get into that later in this video. In terms of land supply, it's completely built, the inner west. It's very low land supply. Funny enough, the most recent land supply I've seen in about pretty much my whole life, so in about 30 years, came up in Habfield, and there's an old park that's actually been sold off to people to buy in. But I mean, again, it's an expensive suburb, so it's going to do well regardless, and that's the only bit of land I can think of. It's also full of gentrified and gentrifying neighbourhoods. There's a high percentage of young professionals living here. So a lot of the inner suburbs have already gentrified. The suburbs that are sort of in the outer parts of the inner west are now gentrifying. Probably also really well known for it is its pub scene and alternative crowd. And the reason you get that is because you got places like you can see here, like the Enore Theatre, where you have the Rolling Stones and you know, bands like tribute bands like that even playing with them there too. And you get this sort of kind of like, you know, hippie kind of like vibe and, you know, alternative crowd. It's very well known for that throughout most of the inner west, and particularly the inner part of the inner west. So that's what living is like in the inner west. It's probably 50% units and 50% houses there, to give everyone an idea. A lot of units around the train lines, and that's only going to increase as well. Let's get into the top 3 suburbs to live in. And I'm going to start at the very top end of the Inner West, and it's one of the most expensive suburbs in all of the Inner West, and that suburb is Balan East. So, look, for those that don't know Balan East, look, it's pretty much straight across the water from Barangaroo. It occupies a very small part of the southern point of the peninsula, of the Balmain Peninsula, and I mean, it's got some of the most expensive properties in all of the Inner West of Sydney. So you get properties selling here for $15 and $20 million on a yearly basis, and that number's only going up. And you got a lot of these houses here have either views of the Harbour Bridge or Anzac Bridge. Some of them have direct views of Anzac Bridge, some of the Harbour Bridge, but depending on where you are and the view you've got in the suburb, that it depends on what you are. But look, you pretty much got, you're straight across from Barangaroo, and from point A to point B, it's only a couple of hundred meters across the water to Barangaroo. So, look, this is just an article from Domain. Balmain East, Sydney's most expensive harbour view real estate, and that's kind of what it's like. I mean, that's what it looks like from some of the homes in Balmain East, which is just insane. So you get people that literally go on a night out and who live here, and they'll or work in Barangaroo or Wynyard, for example. They'll catch the ferry straight across the water or something like that, which is just incredible. There's not many suburbs in Sydney where you can do that and either go for a night out or should I say go straight to a very high paying job. But Balmain East is definitely one of them. Let's get into another suburb, and that suburb I've previously mentioned, but I'll mention it again, and that suburb is Habfield. So for those that don't know where Habfield is, it's basically right next to Leichhardt. It's basically between Leichhardt and Rod Point, or should I say Russell Lea. It's just along there. It's a really nice suburb. Look, Habfield's full of it's a very unique suburb in the Inner West because it's full of homes on very large blocks. Like, your average block in Habfield's about 600 meters squared, but your smallest is like 400. And I mean, there's regular ones here that are above 1,000, some even close to an acre. So that's because Habfield has basically these protections on the suburb where you can't subdivide homes like that. So it's very low density. It's pretty much all detached homes. And you have some that even sell for like $7 million here. The median of Habfield's about $3 million. But if you look at the price per square meter, it's probably the cheapest in all of the Inner West, so it's really good in terms of that. And the reason it has such large, should I say, blocks is because Habfield was originally the garden suburb of Sydney. So this is just from a basically extract. This is actually on a wall here in Sydney, but this is what it was originally supposed to be. So Habfield was known as the garden suburb of Sydney. So that's why you have the large blocks, homes with huge backyards, huge gardens, lots of parks and all that kind of thing. And it fronts Bay Run as well, which is one of Sydney's, I'd say, best known fitness areas that people go around, and even walking and just lifestyle areas. So, I mean, for a family, it's probably, I'd say, one of your most livable suburbs in the West, and a suburb where I'd say you'd genuinely live the original Aussie life on a decent home on a large block. So it's one where if you've got a $3 million budget or so, it's definitely one to consider. I've even found stuff for literally about 2.4 to 2.5, believe it or not. So good suburb to consider, and that especially if you like your larger blocks and your land. Let's finish up with my third and final best suburbs to buy in the Inner West, and that suburb is Rosehill. So look, Rosehill is a suburb, it's right next to obviously Balmain. It occupies part of Balmain Peninsula. There's two sides of it though. You have both the, should I say, Balmain Peninsula side, so the side that is on the northern side of Victoria Road, and the southern side closer to Lilyfield. The northern side is significantly better, I should say, but the southern's still good. And Rosehill's about 2.2 to 2.4 million at the moment, so pretty expensive. But I mean, I've still picked up places here for like $1.7 million, 1.8 around that, and it's pretty good. You actually get a pretty good yield in Rosehill too, because I mean, the income in Rosehill, as you see here, is so strong. Like this is one of the highest in the whole country, to give you an idea. So you've got $3,196 average household income a week. And Rosehill is also a suburb that has some units by the harbour. It also does have a long-term resident population there too. So the people that are buying here are probably on above 4,000 a week. It's home to a lot of professionals, and you'll generally, for a 3-bedroom house, get at least $1,200 a week rent here, like quite easily, especially if it's fairly well maintained. So you get very good yield here, like well above 3.3% in some instances. So it's definitely a good suburb to consider in Sydney's inner west, and it's actually one of the best suburbs, in my opinion, as well, to invest in, but it's also a great suburb to live in. So that's why it sits in one of the best suburbs to live in Sydney's inner west. Let's get into the best suburbs to invest in Sydney's inner west. And it's surprising that this still sits here, because I've been talking about it for a while, and I'm telling you right now, when it goes, it'll really go. And that suburb is Leichhardt. So Leichhardt's probably best known for being the home of the West Tigers in Sydney. You got Leichhardt Oval, and it's known for having a very strong and very old school resident Italian population. It was one of the first places where all the Italian residents actually moved. So Norton Street on a yearly basis has an Italian festival. It's very well known. It's very well, should I say, tended by a lot of Sydney-siders, particularly from people from the city and the inner west, and some even people from the inner east as well. But Leichhardt, look, most of Leichhardt, apart from the part that's close to, should I say, Lilyfield, is mostly low density. It's mostly your kind of miners' cottages style homes, and some larger attached and detached homes too. But look, really, where Leichhardt is, it's 6 to 7 k's from the CBD, and it's very cheap for where it is, and surrounded by very expensive suburbs. So you'll see here, Summerhill, Habfield, Lilyfield, and Annandale are all significantly more expensive than Leichhardt, but Leichhardt sits in between them all. And it's a very well commutable suburb to literally to the CBD. So if you're in the northern pocket, you've got the light rail that goes straight into the CBD. If you're in the sort of middle southern pocket, even the northern pocket too, you've got buses that run all along here straight into the CBD as well. So it's really good in terms of that. Leichhardt is still picking up for under 2 million. Like, I've found places for even like 1.5, 1.6 million sometimes if you're lucky. But 2 million is well achievable in Leichhardt. Really good suburb, good yield as well. Like, you get literally easily 3%, sometimes even more as well. But if you look at what's surrounding and what's going to happen is you'll have the spillover effect here, where you'll have more expensive suburbs where people won't be able to afford, and they'll spill over into Leichhardt, and it'll push the prices up. And there is no land to build in Leichhardt. It's very tightly held. A lot of the actual older Italian community here doesn't tend to sell their homes. They pass it on to the next generation. So definitely consider that in the inner west of Sydney in Leichhardt. I think it is probably one of the picks in terms of to invest in. Let's get into another suburb. Look, it's hard in the inner west as well, Sydney, because it is expensive. But there is a suburb here that is presently, don't get me wrong, it is fairly expensive, but it's going to be ungodly soon because of what's going on there. And that suburb is Five Dock. So people that don't know where Five Dock is, it's right on Hen and Chicken Bay. Basically, it's very close to Bayron too. It's one of your original, should I say, inner west suburbs where you had a lot of your developments throughout sort of the 40s right through to the 70s. A lot of brick veneer homes on larger blocks. 400 to 600 metres squared is fairly normal as well. But the thing about Five Dock that really is going to take it to the next level is it's actually a part of the new inner west line that's going right out to Parramatta. So Five Dock is actually getting a train station in the town centre. So what that's going to do is it's going to make it one of the only suburbs really in all of Sydney that has, especially west of the harbour, that is on a train line that is harbour front. So Five Dock is genuinely a harbour front suburb, and it'll be on a train line. The only other ones you can really think of that are west of the harbour is literally Waverton and Wollstonecroft, and then you could probably argue the new Bay station close to Glebe and Whites Bay will be one as well. But Five Dock will be a residential suburb that will be harbour front. So what you're going to see is you'll get the very wealthy who will start to buy here, and they'll really push this suburb median up. So Five Dock at the moment, sort of in the late twos in terms of purchase price. I'm telling you right now, once this is in and you start to get those really wealthy people moving, this suburb median is going to go probably well above 4, probably above 5 in the next 10 years minimum, maybe even higher. So definitely a suburb to consider that in Five Dock. Look, it's a beautiful suburb too. I really like the suburb. I used to play football here all the time and cricket games and all that kind of thing too. So no complaints with me on that either in Five Dock. Let's close it out with the last suburb I want to get into. And I mean, like, this is easily one of the Inner West's most famous suburbs. It's known as basically the pretty much home of music in all of Sydney. And that suburb is Enore. And look, it's known as a home of music basically because you've got the Enore Theatre there and it's been there for decades and you've had almost every world famous artist play there over time. Now, look, the main road that runs through Enmore, is King Street. So it's literally, funny enough, Enmore is actually, some parts of it are a lot closer to the Newtown station than some parts of Newtown itself. It's actually very close to Newtown station on King Street there. But you've got restaurants there, you've got good pubs, people love living there. The rent's high because it's a very in-demand suburb in terms of people wanting to live there too. But I mean, like, you can see just here, like Enmore Theatre, how busy it gets, and it's always busy, but it's also very underpriced. So it's one of the suburbs that actually hasn't done overly well since COVID, funny enough. So it did have a bit of a peak sort of in late 21, 22, but I mean, it was about 1.4 before COVID, and it's only about 1.765 at the moment, which is really good. But I mean, this suburb it's so underpriced where it is, and you'll get rent of like $1,200 a week for a 3-bedroom home. I found houses here for $1.5 million, 1.6 quite easily. So really good suburb to buy. And I don't think you'll get much better yield than that. Like, I mean, I've seen houses get 3.5 to 3.6% yield here before, which is insane for those sorts of numbers. So, and you get like 9.5% growth long term. So it's crazy. So that's another suburb definitely to consider in the West, investing in Enmore. But look, I'm getting to the end of this video, and I know a lot of my followers, funny enough, do live in Sydney's Inner West. A lot live in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. I do have clients as well who live in Perth too, and also quite a few mining clients that are coming through at the moment, which is good, I guess. At least they're spending their money right. But I mean, for people that are genuinely interested in either buying a home to live in this area or investing in here, I suggest you reach out, because it is an area, again, to a lot of other areas where it is a heavy auction market, and also a lot of properties do tend to sell pre or prior to market, so off market as well. I do tend to have a lot of access to these properties, which is good. And if you're serious about it, I'll make sure you get the right deal and not make any mistakes. Mistakes at this level are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, so it's really important to get this right. But if you are interested in that and you want me to do the job for you, please reach out via www.compoundinvest.com.au. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next one.